The private dining room was tense. A notorious boss was auditioning 3 perfect women to be a stepmother for his 6-year-old daughter. Champagne poured. Gold cutlery chimed. Then the little girl broke free from her guard. She ran past the red carpet, past the candidates, and buried her face in my flour-dusted apron. The room went dead silent. Her father turned, his eyes meeting mine. He was a man no one said no to. Chicago is 2 cities, the one I serve and the one I sleep in. The one I serve is all glass towers and restaurants like Cento, where the wine costs more than my rent. The one I sleep in is down by the river, where the fog smells like damp concrete and the shadows hold their breath. I am Rowan Hale. I am 26 years old. I used to be a nursing student, full of stupid hope, but hope does not pay for chemotherapy. My mother is gone, and her medical debt stayed behind, a final, suffocating inheritance. Now I work double shifts at Cento. I am a waitress, a prep cook. Whatever they need, I am good with my hands, good at staying invisible. Tonight, invisibility was not an option. The air in the restaurant was thick. Marco, the owner, had been vibrating with anxiety all day. He kept wiping his forehead, checking the reservation book, and yelling at the kitchen staff. The entire private wing, Section 4, was booked for 1 party, a party of 5. Matteo Lucero. You did not have to read the society pages to know his name, but you did have to read the shipping manifests. He was 38 years old. He owned Lucero Logistics. He owned the ports, the trucks, the warehouses. He was legitimate, mostly. The rumors said the mostly was the part that made him powerful. He was a widower, and he was bringing his daughter. I saw them arrive through the service door slit, a procession of black SUVs, sleek and silent as sharks. Matteo Lucero emerged first. He wore a suit that probably cost $10,000, but he wore it like armor. He was tall, dark-haired, and moved with an economy of motion that wasted nothing. He was followed by 3 women. They were, in a word, perfect. One was blonde, dripping in diamonds. One was dark-haired, carrying a briefcase, her gaze sharp. The third was elegant, smiling warmly. They were the candidates. Last, a guard lifted out the child, Isla Lucero. She was 6 years old. She was a ghost in a blue velvet dress. Her hair was dark, like her father's. She clutched a worn, stuffed fox, an animal with a missing ear and 1 button eye. She looked impossibly small against the backdrop of armed men and polished marble. The setup was obscene, a blind date, a corporate merger for the position of wife and mother. I felt a twist of disgust, but I smothered it. Disgust does not pay the interest on the loans. My job tonight was simple. Serve Section 4. Keep my head down. Do not speak unless spoken to. Do not make eye contact. For the first hour, I was a ghost. I poured champagne. Golden bubbles for the golden women. I cleared appetizer plates. I moved around the heavier, silent guards posted at the walls. The conversation was strained. The women directed their charm at Matteo, their polite inquiries at Isla. Isla said nothing. She just stared at her plate. She held the fox in her lap under the table. When a siren wailed in the distant city, the little girl flinched. It was a full body jolt, sharp and painful. I recognized it. It was the sound of panic, the sound of loss, the sound of ambulances arriving too late. Her father placed a heavy hand on her shoulder, but he did not look at her. He was assessing the woman with the briefcase. I returned with the main course. My apron was damp. I knew I had a small smudge of flour on my cheek from prepping dough in the kitchen. I was balancing 3 plates on my arm, the heat seeping into my skin. Isla was watching the candidates. The blonde woman leaned in, smiling brightly. "You are just adorable," the woman said, her voice high and tinkling. "We should go shopping for ponies." Isla pushed her chair back. It happened so fast. She did not scream. She just moved. She slipped from her chair like water. A guard, a man built like a refrigerator, lunged for her. He was too slow. She ran. She ran past the blonde woman. She ran past the sharp lawyer. She ran past the elegant socialite. She ran across the antique Persian rug, a small blue blur. And she slammed into my legs. I stumbled, the plates rattling. I caught my balance, but I could not move. Her arms were wrapped around my waist, clinging to me with desperate strength. Her face was buried in the rough cotton of my apron. The world stopped. The only sound was the ventilation system. Marco, standing by the service door, went pale. The three women stared, their perfect smiles frozen into masks of confusion and offense. The guards had their hands inside their jackets. I heard a tiny muffled sound, a sob. Then she spoke. Her voice was thin, but it cut through the silence like a knife. "I want her." I stood there, a human shield made of cheap fabric. I could feel Matteo Lucero's eyes on me. I did not dare look up. I could feel the heat of his anger, his confusion. He stood slowly. I heard the scrape of his chair on the wood floor. He was a man no one said no to. He was a man who controlled the docks, the unions, the trucks. He was a man who was rumored to make problems disappear. And his daughter, his silent, broken child, was clinging to a waitress. He walked toward us. Each step was heavy, measured. He stopped just feet away. I still looked down, at the top of Isla's dark head. "Isla," he commanded. His voice was deep, rough. "Come here." The little girl just trembled and held me tighter. He looked at me then. His eyes were not just cold, they were assessing, calculating, dangerous. He was weighing options. He was deciding if I was a nuisance or a threat. But as he looked at me, something in his expression cracked. He saw... I do not know what he saw. Not a threat, not an opportunist, just a 26-year-old woman in an apron, holding a tray. He saw my stillness. I had to do something. I could not just stand there. My training, the nursing instincts I thought I had buried, took over. I carefully, slowly, placed the heavy plates on a nearby service stand. My hands were steady. I ignored Matteo Lucero. I ignored the guards. I focused on the child. I bent my knees, wincing at the ache from the long shift, and knelt until I was eye level with her, even as she hid her face. "Hello," I said. My voice was low, soft, the way I used to speak to my mother when the pain was bad. "My name is Rowan." She did not move, just kept her face pressed into my apron. "That is a very beautiful fox," I whispered. "He looks like he has had many adventures." A tiny shrug. I tried again, thinking of the kitchen. "I was just in the kitchen. We finished making the strawberry ice cream." I paused. "Do you like strawberry ice cream?" She was silent for a beat. Then she gave a tiny nod against my stomach. She finally pulled back, just enough to look at me. Her eyes were huge, dark, and red from crying. She whispered, the sound so faint I almost missed it. "Mommy made panna cotta." Behind me, I heard Matteo Lucero take a sharp breath. It was a sound of pure shock. He spoke to his guard, his voice rough. She spoke. The guard, the mountain, just nodded. He looked stunned. "Yes, sir." I looked at Isla's face. This was the first time she had spoken to a stranger in months. Maybe a year. The tension in the room shifted. The anger was gone, replaced by a stunned, heavy quiet. The three women looked completely lost. This was not on their agenda. The core conflict was suddenly clear. The Lucero family, his organization, they needed a proper alliance, a marriage that brought money, power, or peace. They needed one of the women in the silk dresses. They did not need Rowan Hale, the former nursing student who smelled like garlic and flour. Isla had just derailed a dynasty's careful planning. The dinner was, of course, over. Matteo Lucero nodded curtly to the three women. "My apologies. This evening is concluded." They were ushered out, their faces tight with manufactured sympathy that barely hid their fury. Marco rushed over, wringing his hands. "Mr. Lucero, I am so sorry. She is new. Wait," Matteo said. Marco stopped. I stopped. I had started to stand up, to back away toward the kitchen. Matteo Lucero looked at me. He was not angry anymore. He was calculating. "My daughter. She has selective mutism, stemming from trauma. She has not spoken to anyone outside of the immediate household in 11 months. I looked at Isla. She was holding her father's hand now, but she was still staring at me. Her small hand reached out, her fingers just brushing my apron. "The press will hear of this," he said, more to himself than to me. "The failed meeting." He was thinking aloud. "This is not clean." He needed to control the story. He needed a bridge. He looked from his daughter to me, and a plan formed in his cold, dark eyes. "I have a proposition for you," he said. It was not a request. "You have a calming effect on her." "I'm a waitress," I said, my voice shaking slightly. "I know what you are," and he replied. It was not unkind. It was a statement of fact. "I will hire you to be her companion, a temporary measure, to, stabilize the situation until she is ready for a more permanent arrangement. A companion, a glorified nanny, a piece of public relations strategy." I thought of my apartment. I thought of the final demand letters stacking up on the counter. The debt was a mountain I could never climb. He named a number, a weekly salary. It was more than I made in 3 months. It was enough. It was enough to pay them off. All of them. I looked at his face, so controlled and hard. Then I looked at Isla. She was watching me, her eyes wide, holding her breath. She was terrified I would say no. In that moment, she was not a mafia boss's daughter. She was just a 6-year-old girl who lost her mother and her voice. "Yes," I said. My voice was clear. "I will do it." But I was not looking at Matteo Lucero. I was looking at Isla. I will do it for her. My last shift at Cento was quiet. Marco paid me in cash, his hands trembling slightly. He looked relieved and terrified. "You are a good girl, Rowan," he said, not meeting my eye. "Just, be careful." The Lucero penthouse was not a home. It was a statement. It sat on the top floor of a glass spike, overlooking the river and the entire Chicago skyline. The furniture was minimal, expensive and cold. The silence was absolute, broken only by the hum of the air filtration and the quiet murmur of guards speaking into their wrists. My probation began. I was assigned a guest room that was 3 times the size of my apartment. Isla, however, did not speak to me for the first 2 days. She watched me. She followed me from room to room, her little fox clutched in her hand, her feet silent on the marble floors. She was a shadow, assessing me. I was not a nanny. I was not a therapist. I was just Rowan. On the 3rd morning, I went to her. She was sitting on the floor of her bedroom, which was filled with more toys than a store. She was not playing with any of them. "I am going to the library," I said, keeping my voice even. "I am leaving in 10 minutes. You are welcome to come with me." I did not wait for an answer. I went to the elevator. The guard, a large man named Leo, looked at me, then at Isla, who had appeared at my side, her coat in her hand. We drove in one of the black SUVs. It smelled like new leather and gun oil. We went to the main public library, a building of stone and sunlight. Leo stayed by the door, trying to look casual and failing. Isla's hand was a tiny, cold bird in mine. We walked to the children's section. I found a book about a fox who gets lost. We sat on a brightly colored rug, and I read to her. My voice was low, steady. I did not ask her questions. I just read. She leaned her small head against my arm. She relaxed, just a little. On the way out, I stopped at a small cart selling juice. "I would like a strawberry juice," I said to the cashier. I looked at Isla. "What about you?" She just looked at the woman, her eyes wide with mild panic. "It is okay," I said softly, just to her. "You can just point." She pointed to the apple juice. I paid. As we walked away, I leaned down. "The next time we come, maybe we can practice saying thank you to the lady, just a whisper. Would that be okay?" She gave me a single, jerky nod. The heart of the penthouse was its kitchen. It was massive, stainless steel, and looked like it had never been used. There was no food in the refrigerator, just bottled water and a single perfect bowl of lemons. I remembered her words. Mommy made panna cotta. I gave a grocery list to Leo. He looked confused, but he returned an hour later with everything: cream, sugar, vanilla beans, gelatin. I found Isla and led her into the sterile kitchen. I found an apron, one of her mother's probably, and tied it loosely around her small waist. "We are going to make a mess," I told her. I showed her how to split the vanilla bean, the tiny black seeds dotting the cream. I let her hold the whisk, her small hands struggling to mix the heavy liquid. "My mother and I used to make cookies," I said, keeping my voice light. "She always let me lick the spoon. She said that was the best part." Isla did not look up, but she stopped stirring. She used this bowl," Isla whispered. I froze. I looked at the heavy ceramic bowl we were using. "It is a good bowl," I said quietly. The smell of vanilla and warm cream filled the cold room. It smelled like a home. When the mixture was done, we poured it into small glasses and put them in the refrigerator to set. I was wiping down the counter when I saw him. Matteo Lucero was standing on the glass veranda that overlooked the kitchen. He was in his suit, his jacket off, his tie loosened. He was just standing there, watching. He was not the boss. He was not the dangerous man from the restaurant. He was just a father, locked out, watching his daughter do something normal. I gave Isla a spoon to lick. A sound bubbled up from her chest. It was small, rusty, a giggle. She had spilled cream on her nose, and she laughed. Matteo heard it. He took a step toward the glass, his hand resting on the door. His face was a mask of shock and something else, something I could not read. He looked at me, and his eyes were dark and intense. The world outside the glass box did not wait. The story of the failed blind date exploded. I was naive. I had not understood. Matteo Lucero trying to remarry was not gossip. It was news. The three women were prominent: an oil heiress, a corporate lawyer, a senator's daughter. Then someone leaked a photo of me. It was blurry, taken from across the street, showing me getting into the SUV with Isla. The headlines were brutal. "Waitress vs. Heiresses Lucero's shocking new choice." My past was dug up. The medical debt, the fact I dropped out of nursing school. The articles painted me as a gold digger, a schemer who had trapped a grieving child. I got a call from Marco when he was hysterical. "Rowan, my restaurant, they are picketing the socialites. They say I am a part of this scandal. They are canceling reservations. I am ruined." I felt the blood drain from my face. I was not just a complication. I was a wrecking ball. I found Matteo in his office, a room that was just screens and maps of the harbor. "I have to go," I said, my voice shaking. "I am destroying Marco's life. I am making things worse for you." He did not look up. "Sit." I stood. "I will not." He finally turned, his eyes cold. "The leak was not an accident. This is Dominic Moretti. The Moretti Group. He is a rival. He does not use guns. He uses data, public relations, and urban development contracts. He wants my shipping lanes. He is trying to make me look unstable, to panic my shareholders, to make the city commission doubt me." "What does this have to in relation to me?" I asked. "You are an unknown variable. He's using you. The Waitress is a good story. It makes me look impulsive, weak." He paused. "As for Marco, it is handled. My lawyers are with him now. His legal fees are paid. He has been given a grant for his inconvenience. He will be fine." He had not asked. He had just fixed it. He had bought my old boss's silence. "You cannot just buy people," I whispered. "I can," he said simply. "I just did." The trust with Isla was a fragile thing, built in millimeters. One afternoon, she looked tired. She had dark circles under her eyes. "Time for a nap," I said. She went to her bed but lay there, her eyes wide open. The lights in the penthouse were automatic, bright. She looked at me, her small body tense. Then she held out her stuffed fox, the one with the torn ear, the one she never let go of. "Can you hold him?" she whispered. "So he is safe." My breath hitched. I took the small, worn toy. "I will keep him safe. I promised." She sighed, a tiny sound, and her eyes closed. She fell asleep in the daylight. I sat in the chair next to her bed for 2 hours, holding that fox, feeling the weight of what she had just given me. Mateo wanted to talk that evening. He had heard from her therapists. Her progress was remarkable. "I want to increase your hours," he said. He was standing by the window, looking down at the city lights. "Full time. I will move you in here." "No," I said. He turned. His patience was thin. "I'm paying you an obscene amount of money, Rowan. This is not a negotiation. I am not one of your shipping containers. Mateo," the name slipped out and he stiffened. "You cannot just schedule her healing. You cannot control this. You are trying to manage her grief like a business merger. It is trauma. It is messy. It does not follow a spreadsheet." "And you are the expert," he shot back. "A nursing student who quit." The words stung, but I held my ground. I know that a child needs normalcy, She needs to feel safe. This, I motioned to the glass walls, the silent guards, is not normal. It is a gilded cage. She needs the library. She needs to go to the park by the river. She needs to be a 6-year-old, not a public relations asset. We were yelling, or rather, he was just getting colder, more dangerous. "She needs protection," he said, his voice a low growl. "She needs connection," I countered. "I will stay. I will keep helping her, but on one condition." He was silent, waiting. "Stop using her. Stop using me. I saw the papers. You are letting them spin this story that I am your new girlfriend. It is a shield for you, but it puts a target on her. I will not be a party to it. You want me to help your daughter, then you let me help her, not your image." He stared at me for a full minute. I could see the calculation in his eyes. "Fine," he said, biting off the word. "We do it your way, for now." I kept my apartment. I needed it. I needed to be able to lock my own door, a door that did not have a guard outside it. I left the penthouse around 11 one night. The air was cold, damp. My car was parked 3 blocks away, in a public garage. A dark pickup truck, old and battered, pulled out of the alley as I turned onto my street. It stayed 2 car lengths behind me. I turned right, it turned right. I turned left, it turned left. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was not a coincidence. This was a message. This was Moretti. I grabbed my phone and sped up, running a yellow light. The truck stayed with me. I did not drive home. I drove to the nearest police station. The moment I swerved into the brightly lit parking lot, the truck's engine roared, and it sped off into the night. I sat there, shaking, my hands locked on the wheel. I called him. "A truck followed me," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "A dark pickup. It is gone now. I'm at the precinct on 18th. His response was a string of curses, low and violent. "I'm sending Leo. He drives you from now on. You are done walking." "No," I said. The word was out before I could think. "What did you say?" I said no. That is what they want. They want to scare me. They want you to lock me in the tower. If I take your driver, if I live in your fortress, then Ela never gets to be normal. She never gets to go to the library. She will always be the boss's daughter. I will not do that to her. I will be more careful. But I will not be your prisoner." There was a dangerous, heavy silence on the line. I had just defied him again. "You are a fool, Rowan," he whispered. "Good night, Mateo," I said, and I hung up. I did not sleep. The next morning, I drove back to the penthouse. I felt tired, scared, but also strangely alive. When I walked in, Isla ran to me. She was beaming. She was holding a piece of paper. It was a drawing of a crayon drawing. It showed 3 people, a tall man in a suit, a little girl with dark hair, and a woman with brown hair, in a simple blue dress, my dress. We were all holding hands. Above us, a bright yellow sun. She ran past me, toward the massive, intimidating stainless steel refrigerator. She grabbed a magnet, a gaudy, promotional one for one of his shipping companies. She pinned the drawing to the door. It was a 6-year-old's declaration, a statement of fact, a picture of her family. I looked at the drawing, and I looked at the guard by the door. in this house, in this life. That simple, innocent piece of paper was not art. It was an act of war. Isla's drawing of the three of us stayed on the massive stainless steel refrigerator. It was held up by a cheap magnet shaped like a cargo ship. In a house of calculated minimalism, it was a bright, defiant splash of color. It was an act of rebellion. The fragile piece that drawing represented lasted exactly 48 hours. The next attack from Dominic Moretti did not come from a dark truck. It came through the internet. An anonymous email was blasted to every major media outlet in Chicago. It contained scanned copies of Lucero Logistics contracts. They were real, but they were carefully cut, spliced, and edited. They were manipulated to imply smuggling, payoffs, and deals with unsanctioned foreign entities. The press exploded. The legitimate side of Mateo's world began to shake. I saw him that morning in his office. He was not shouting. He was worse. He was perfectly still, watching the data streams on his wall of screens turn from green to red. "He is squeezing," Mateo said, his voice a low vibration. He did not turn to look at me. "He's painting me as a criminal to my legitimate partners. He timed this. He knows the family is pushing for an alliance." He finally turned. His face was pale, his eyes dark. Dominic Moretti sent a message, an offer of truce. A truce, I felt a chill. A marriage alliance. He said the words as if they were poison. He's proposing I marry his niece, Bianca Moretti. I knew the name. Everyone did. Bianca Moretti was not just a socialite. She was Ivy League educated. Brilliant, ruthless, and beautiful. She was deeply embedded in her uncle's corporate dealings. She was a perfect weapon. A marriage would not be a marriage. It would be a merger. It would lock the Chicago harbor. It would end the war. "It is a perfect move," Mateo said, his voice empty. "It would stabilize the business. It would satisfy my family elders. It would double our power." Are you considering it?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. I felt sick. "I am not," he said, "but the family is the elders. They see it as the only logical path. They have arranged a dinner tonight for me to meet her." Isla, who had been sitting in the corner of his office drawing, went still. She had heard. Children always hear. Later, when the housekeeper, a stern woman named Mrs. Petrov Yidiakou, tried to put Ila into a new, stiff velvet dress for the dinner, the screaming began. It was not a tantrum. It was a raw, primal sound of terror. I ran to her room. Isla had kicked off the dress and was hiding under her massive bed, clutching her fox. "I do not want her!" she shrieked, her voice cracking. "I do not want a new mommy. I want Rowan." Mrs. Petrov looked at me, her face tight with disapproval. "Mr. Lucero is waiting. The family is arriving." Mateo appeared in the doorway. He looked like a man being torn in two. His face was tight with exhaustion and pressure. "Rowan," he said, his voice flat. "She will not come down. The family is waiting. Bianca Moretti is downstairs." "Then I am not going," I said, my heart pounding against my ribs. "I will stay here with her." "No." His eyes were hard, the calculating boss back in place. "You will get her ready. You will put her in the dress, and you will both come down. You are her companion, so accompany her." It was a command. He was not asking me to help. He was ordering me into the lion's den. He was using me as a shield, or perhaps as a sacrifice. I crawled under the bed. Isla was sobbing, her small body shaking. "Hey," I whispered. "It is just dinner. It is not a decision. It is just food. I will be right next to you. I will not leave your side. I promise." It took 20 minutes, but I got her into the dress. I held her hand as we walked down the marble staircase, toward the sound of polite, cold voices. The main dining room was terrifying. It was dominated by a dark mahogany table that could seat 30. It was filled with old men in dark suits and older women in severe, expensive dresses. They all looked like judges. They all looked at me with open disdain. And there, seated at Mateo's right, was Bianca Moretti. She was perfect. Her hair was dark and sleek. Her dress was a deep red that radiated confidence. She had intelligent eyes and a smile that was both warm and sharp. She looked at me, then at Isla, with a polite, unreadable curiosity. I was wearing a simple black dress. The only nice thing I owned. I felt like a field mouse at a table of wolves. Mateo had placed a chair for me next to Isla, at the far end of the table, as far from the center of power as possible. The dinner was agonizing. The clink of silver on china was the only sound for long stretches. I cut Isla's food into tiny pieces. She sat stiffly, her head down, clutching her fox in her lap. An older woman, Mateo's aunt, Zia Elena, looked down the long table at me. Her pearls were as large as marbles. Her voice was like dry ice. "Mateo," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "it is a family matter. Must the help eat with us?" The silence that followed was absolute. Every fork stopped. I froze, the blood rushing to my face. I could feel Bianca Moretti's eyes on me. I was the help, the waitress, the girl with flour on her apron. I was nothing. Before I could even breathe, Mateo's voice cut through the room. It was not loud, it was cold, it was lethal. "Zia Elena? Rowan is a guest in my home. She's here at my invitation, as my daughter's most trusted friend." He paused, his eyes pinning the old woman to her chair. "If you have a problem with her presence, you are free to leave." The woman's powdered face tightened. She looked away, her lips a thin white line. It was a declaration of war against his own blood. Bianca Moretti watched the entire exchange. She did not smile. She just observed, her head tilted. She was measuring the new landscape. She looked at Mateo, then at me. It was a look of pure calculation. The cut from his aunt had been deep, but Mateo's defense of me was a tactical nuclear weapon. Later, I found him on the veranda, the city lights glittering below us. "They hate me," I said quietly. "They fear what they do not control," he said. He was staring at the harbor. "Moretti is pushing. Bianca is smart. She is offering stability. The family sees her as the answer. The press is painting me as unstable. I need a countermove." "Then show them," I said, the idea forming, born from my own past, my old neighborhood, but not his way, not with threats, not with a marriage. Your family has the Lucero Foundation. It is just a name on a website, a tax shelter. Use it, make it real. He turned, intrigued. "How?" "The West Side," I said, my voice gaining strength. "The neighborhood I grew up in, the kids there, they have nothing. Moretti uses that area for his dirty recruiting, for his runners. He preys on them. What if you offered something else? What if the Lucero Foundation funded a community cooking program? A safe place after school? Real skills. It is not just charity. It is a strategic move. It is healing. It is good press. That is also actually good." He was quiet, letting the idea settle. A cooking program, he repeated, testing the words. "You fight his data with tomato sauce." I whispered. "You fight his narrative. You show you are building, not just controlling. You show you are a part of Chicago, not just a man who owns it." A slow smile touched his lips. It was a rare, startling thing. "That is clever, Rowan. That is very, very clever." He moved faster than I could have imagined. Within 1 week, his people had secured a church basement on the west side. It was old, but it was clean. They had installed 6 small cooking stations. I was, bafflingly, put in charge. Isla, who now refused to leave my side, was my self-proclaimed head assistant. The first class was pure chaos. 10 kids, all under 12, vibrating with nervous energy and suspicion. They did not trust this. They did not trust the clean new equipment. They did not trust me. We were making a simple pasta sauce from scratch. In the middle of the lesson, he showed up. Mateo Lucero. He was wearing a shirt that probably cost $2,000, and he looked completely, utterly lost. The kids stared. "What are you doing here?" I hissed, wiping tomato on my apron. "Observing my investment, Ma," he said. A small, wiry boy named Sam pointed a wooden spoon at him. "Mister, you gonna help or just stand there?" Before Mateo could answer, I untied my apron and tossed it at him. "We need the onions diced. Small." He stared at the onion as if it were a hostile negotiator. He picked up the knife, and he was awful, clumsy, awkward. The man who controlled the entire Chicago port system, was being defeated by a simple vegetable. The kid started to snicker. His eyes started to water profusely. "This is caustic," he muttered, blinking rapidly. Isla, seeing her powerful, untouchable father struggling and crying over an onion, burst out laughing. It was not a giggle. It was a full, joyous belly laugh. It was a sound I'd never heard. She ran over and patted his arm. "It is okay, Papa," she said, her voice clear as a bell. "Rowan says you just have to be brave." He looked at his daughter, his face a mask of stunned disbelief. He looked at the half-mangled onion. He looked at me, his eyes streaming, and he kept chopping. Amid the rich smell of olive oil and garlic, our eyes met. He was not the boss. I was not the help. We were just two people, covered in onion fumes, watching his daughter laugh. The moment was short. It was real, and it terrified me more than any of Moretti's men. The community kitchen was a massive, unexpected success. The press loved it. It was the perfect counter-narrative. Dominic Moretti must have hated it. His next move was not strategic. It was cruel. I was driving Isla home from the library 2 days later. We were on the Franklin Street Bridge. A dark pickup truck, the same one that had followed me, slammed into my rear bumper. It was not a hard hit. It was a calculated jolt. It sent my small car into a shallow spin on the wet pavement. Isla screamed. The truck sped off. We were fine, shaken but physically unharmed. But by the time we got back to the penthouse, 2 people were waiting for us in the lobby, a man and a woman in plain, rumpled suits. "Miss Rowan Hale?" the woman asked, her eyes cold. "I am Agent Miller, Department of Child Services." My blood turned to ice. "We received an anonymous tip," she said, reading from a file. "Alleging child endangerment, reckless driving with a minor present. We also have photos." She held up grainy 8x10 pictures. They were of me and Isla on the bridge. The photos were timed perfectly. They did not show the truck. They just showed my car, spinning. "We have a report that you are an unstable presence, hired from a restaurant with a history of severe debt. We are here to assess the child's safety." Mateo arrived. I'd never seen him angry. This was something else. This was a cold, silent inferno. He handled the child services agents with a terrifying, icy courtesy. He showed them Isla, who was safe and clinging to my hand. Then his team of lawyers arrived, and the agents left, promising a full and immediate investigation. When they were gone, he went to his office. He made one call. He called a meeting. I heard him. The soundproofing was good, but his voice carried. He was shouting. Other men were there, his capos, his lieutenants. "This is a line," one man roared. "He puts his hands on the girl. He uses the city against us. We end this, Mateo, the old way, tonight." "We cut the head off the snake," another yelled. There was a heavy crash. Mateo had swept something from his desk. "Quiet," he roared. Silence. "He wants me to use violence," Mateo said, his voice a low, lethal growl. "He wants me to be the animal he tells the press I am. He wants me to make a mistake. He wants me to give him leverage. We will not." There was a confused murmur. "We will not use guns," Mateo continued. "We will use law. We will use data. We will find the digital trail. We will find the man who called child services. We will find the driver of that truck. We will find the leak in the Port Authority. We will dismantle him, piece by legal piece. We will use his own weapons against him." It was a new language for him, a language I had helped teach him. And in his mouth, it sounded far more terrifying than any bullet. He found me later. I was in the community kitchen. It was late. almost midnight. I was just scrubbing counters, trying to make my hands stop shaking. He came in, his suit jacket gone, his sleeves rolled up. "My tech team is starting the trace," he said. He looked exhausted. "Mateo, this is my fault," I whispered. "I am the target. I am your weak spot. He is attacking you through me. Maybe I should go, for her safety." "No." He stepped closer, until he was only inches away. "You are not my weak spot." "Rowan," he reached out, his hand touching my cheek. His thumb was rough against my skin. You are the only part of this that makes any sense." I stared up at him. "I came in here," he said, his voice quiet. "I came here to chop onions. I thought it was the most ridiculous thing I had ever done. And then I heard her laugh. My daughter. I have not heard her laugh like that since her mother." He stopped, his throat working, looked at me, and his eyes were not cold. They were raw. "Rowan," he started, his voice thick, "I do not want Bianca Moretti. I do not want an alliance. I want—" His phone buzzed, a harsh, demanding sound that shattered the moment. He pulled it out. His face went dark. "What?" He listened. "They what? How many? From which warehouse?" He looked at me, all emotion gone. The boss back in place, his face a mask of controlled fury. "Moretti." He did not wait. He just used his Port Authority contact to seize 2 of my warehouses, an anonymous tip about contraband. He's choking my supply line. He strode out of the kitchen, already barking orders into the phone. "Get the legal team on the line. Now." I stood there, the smell of old coffee and yeast in the air. I was standing on a knife's edge. This was not a game. This was not a romance. This was a war. People were getting hurt. My reputation was destroyed. His entire empire was at risk. He was offering me something, a life. But it was a life where phones ring in the dark, where warehouses are seized, where cars are run off bridges, where child services comes to your door. I looked at the small, colorful cutting board where Isla had been learning to chop carrots. I was not going anywhere. She needed me. And I realized with a terrifying jolt, starting to need him. I would see this through. I had to. The seizure of the warehouses was the move that broke the family's patience. That night, after the lawyers had filed the first injunctions and the phones had finally stopped ringing, the elders convened. It was not a meeting. It was a trial. I watched through the glass of Mateo's office as he stood before a massive video screen, his face grim. His aunts and uncles, the council of the family, stared back at him. Their faces were cold. When he finally emerged, hours later, he looked as if he had aged 10 years. "They have given me an ultimatum," he said. His voice was hollow. He walked to the window, staring down at the lights of his city. The Moretti situation, the press, the child services visit. They see it all as a failure of my leadership. They believe I am compromised. "Compromised by what?" I whispered, though I already knew the answer. "By you." He said it flatly, a fact, not an accusation. They see Bianca Moretti as the only solution, a way to merge with Moretti, to end the war, to stabilize the family. They've given me 30 days. Marry Bianca, or they will invoke the family charter. They will freeze the trust, all of it. My operational funds, my personal accounts, my legal retainers, everything. They will cut me off completely. He was trapped. Dominic Moretti had him in a pincer move, with his own family acting as the other blade. "What are you going to do?" I asked, my stomach twisting. "What they want me to do," he said. "I'm going to give them a show." 2 days later, I understood what he meant. It was grotesque. The family elders, led by Zia Elena, had decided to correct the narrative. They were restaging the blind date. It was a command performance, a public act of surrender. We were back at Cento, the same private dining room, only this time it was filled with flowers. Zia Elena had invited a hand-picked list of society reporters and friendly media bloggers. It was a setup. Bianca Moretti was already there, seated at the table, looking radiant in a cream-colored dress. She was the picture of grace. Mateo stood beside her, his face a mask of stone. "Why are we here?" I hissed at him. I was standing by the service entrance, my designated spot. I had been ordered to bring Isla. "We are here," Mateo said, his voice low, "because they want a visual. They want the waitress companion to be seen graciously handing my daughter over to the new mother. They are documenting my compliance." Isla was trembling, her hand locked in mine. She was wearing the same blue velvet dress from the first night, a cruel piece of stagecraft. "I do not like it," she whispered, hiding her face against my leg. "The lady with the pearls is watching me." Zia Elena. She was holding court, smiling at the reporters. "Mr. Lucero has simply been taking time to make a considered choice for his daughter's future," she was saying. "He is a man who values family above all." "Bring the child," the old woman commanded, gesturing to me. I felt sick. I looked at Mateo, a silent, desperate appeal. He would not meet my eyes. He was trapped, and he was dragging us into the cage with him. "It is okay," I whispered to Isla, forcing a smile. "We just have to sit for 5 minutes. I will be right here. I will not leave you." I walked her to the table, her small feet dragging on the rug. I sat her in the chair beside Mateo. Bianca Moretti leaned in. She was smooth, her voice warm. "Hello, Isla. It is so nice to see you again." She pushed a beautifully wrapped box across the table. "I heard you like animals, so I found something very special for you." Isla just stared at it. She looked at Bianca, then at her father. He was looking at his water glass, his jaw so tight I thought it might break. Then her eyes found mine. Across the room, I saw the panic rise in her, the sense of absolute betrayal. "No," Isla said. Her voice was small. Zia Elena's smile tightened. "What is that, dear?" "No." Isla shoved the gift. It clattered to the floor. "No." She scrambled from her chair. "Isla," Mateo yelled, reaching for her, but she was gone. She ran, just as she had done the first time. She ran past the reporters, past her glowering great-aunt, past her father's chair. She ran straight to me, slammed into my waist, and locked her arms around me. She buried her face in my simple black dress, and she howled. It was not a cry. It was a scream of raw, primal grief and terror. "I want her! I want Rowan!" she shrieked, her voice echoing in the stunned silence. "I do not want her! I do not want anybody else! I want Rowan!" The room was dead. The only sound was my heart pounding and Isla's ragged sobs. The cameras were rolling, capturing every second of this disaster. Bianca Moretti looked stunned, her perfect composure finally cracking. Zia Elena's face turned a deep, mottled red. She stood, pointing a trembling, jeweled finger directly at me. This is an outrage, she spat. "You did this. You have poisoned this child. This is what happens when you let the help into the house. Get her out of here. Get that waitress out." A guard by the door took a step toward me. "Stop." Mateo's voice was not loud, but it cut through the room like a razor. He had stood up. He did not look at me. He did not look at Isla. He walked, step by measured step, until he was standing directly in front of his aunt. He was so close. She had to crane her neck to look up at him. "Do not," he said, his voice a lethal whisper that everyone could hear. "Ever speak about her that way again." The old woman's mouth fell open. He had never, in his life, spoken to her like that. He had just drawn a line in the sand, in front of the press, against his own blood. He turned to the stunned reporters. I knew I had to say something. This was my fault. I was the one who had brought this chaos into their lives. I held Isla's shaking body tighter. "I am not a prize," I said. My voice was shaking, but it was clear. The reporters turned to me. "I am not a choice in an alliance. I am not anything. I am the person that Isla feels safe with. That is all this is. That is all that matters." I looked at Mateo, my eyes pleading. "Please, stop this. Do not do this to her." Mateo looked at me. The stone mask was gone. His face was raw, exposed. He looked at his daughter, crying in my arms. He looked at his aunt, who was watching him with undisguised fury. He looked at Bianca Moretti. She met his gaze, and in a moment of extraordinary grace, she gave him a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. It was permission. It was an abdication. He turned back to the reporters. The trap was broken. He was no longer a man being coerced. He was the boss. "My daughter's safety is not political," he announced, his voice ringing with absolute authority. "Her healing is not a negotiation." He looked directly at Zia Elena. "My family, we will respect her choice." He nodded to his head of security. "This event is over. Thank you for coming." To his personal guards, he said, "Escort everyone out, now." It was done. He had detonated the ultimatum. He had chosen his daughter. He had chosen me. He had, in all likelihood, just thrown away his entire fortune. In the ensuing chaos, guards ushered the reporters and the apoplectic family members out. We were in the small, dim service hallway by the elevators. It was just the three of us, suspended in the aftermath. Isla was still attached to me, her sobs quieting into hiccups. I started, my voice thick. You know what you just did. Do you not?" "Yes," he said, his voice hoarse. He looked undone. He looked terrified. He looked free. He looked at me, his eyes dark and frantic, like a man drowning. And then he moved. He put one hand on the wall beside my head, bracing himself. His other hand went to my waist, pulling me toward him. Isla was still wedged between us, but he did not care. He leaned in and his lips crashed onto mine. It was not gentle. It was not romantic. It was a kiss of pure, unadulterated panic. It was desperate, clumsy and hard. It was all the fear and rage and exhaustion of the last few weeks. It was a plea and a declaration. It tasted like expensive wine and the metallic tang of adrenaline. It lasted maybe 3 seconds. He pulled back, his breathing ragged. He was shaking. Or maybe I was. "Papa," Isla whispered, her small voice full of confusion. The elevator doors pinged open. Leo, his guard, stood inside, his face a perfect mask of professional indifference. "Let's go home," Matteo said, his voice rough. We stepped into the elevator. The doors closed, sealing the three of us inside, a broken, terrified, and completely changed family. Isla fell asleep in the car, her small body finally succumbing to the emotional exhaustion. I carried her to her bed, and she did not let go of my hand. Even in sleep, I sat there for an hour, just watching her breathe. When I finally came out, Matteo was standing by the wall of glass, his phone buzzing violently on the coffee table. He was ignoring it. "They will be calling," I said. "The council, your aunt." "Let them call," Wing, he said. They will cut you off. Matteo, they will freeze everything." "Yes, they will ruin you." "They will try," he said softly. Just then, his head of security, Leo, burst in from the private elevator. His face was grim. "Boss, you need to see this. Now." Leo turned on the massive screen. It was not the family calling. It was the news. Dominic Moretti had not waited a single day. He had struck that night, using the chaos of the failed press conference as cover. In the wake of the bizarre and chaotic Lucero press event, a news anchor was saying, her face serious, "A trove of new documents has been released by an anonymous source. These documents, which appear to be digitally certified, paint a far more damaging picture than previous leaks." On the screen flashed copies of bank transfers, offshore shell corporations, shipping manifests with illegal cargo designations. All of them were brilliant forgeries, digitally aged and signed with what looked like Matteo's authentic signature. "The U.S. Attorney's Office has just confirmed," the anchor continued, "that they are issuing immediate subpoenas for Mr. Lucero and his entire executive team on suspicion of racketeering and fraud." My blood ran cold. This was not a business move. This was a kill shot. Moretti was framing him, and he had done it at the exact moment Matteo was most vulnerable, alienated from his family and his finances. I started to shake. This is my fault. Matteo turned to look at me. Worry, this is my fault, I repeated, my voice cracking. I told you to fight him. I told you to use the community kitchen. I made you soft. I made you look weak. He saw it. He saw you defend me. He saw you break with your family. And he struck. If I had never been here, you would have taken the deal. You would have married Bianca. You would be safe. I backed away, the room spinning. I am your weakness. Your family knows it. Moretti knows it. I am the reason this is happening. I turned, my eyes blurring with tears. I have to go. I have to leave. It is the only way to keep you safe. I turned to run to my room, to pack my bag, to disappear. Please don't go. I froze. Isla was standing in the dark hallway, her small face pale. Her fox clutched in her hand. She had heard every word. Please, Rowan, she whispered, her lip trembling. Please do not leave me. I ran to her, falling to my knees and pulling her into a hug so tight it ached. I will not, I whispered, burying my face in her hair. I will not. I promise. Matteo was there, kneeling beside us, his large hand coming to rest on Isla's back. He was forming a circle with us. He looked at me over his daughter's head. His eyes were not cold. They were not panicked. They were burning. He thinks this is the end, Matteo said, his voice a low, steady growl. He thinks he has won. He is wrong. This is not about the money. It is not about the family. It is about this. His hand was gentle on Isla's back. It is about us. He looked at me, and his gaze was a vow. We will do this right, he said, my way, your way, the hard way. No more lies, no more games. I will burn him to the ground with the truth. He held out his free hand, palm up, in the space between us. Stay, he said. Stay and fight with me. I looked at his strong hand. I looked at the terrified child we were both holding. I put my hand in his. I will stay. We were not a couple. We were a conspiracy. My hand in his was a silent vow. The subpoenas were real. The family funds were frozen, and the press was circling the penthouse like vultures. We were trapped in the glass tower, the three of us, and the city was waiting for Matteo to fall. We have to maintain a routine, I insisted the next morning, my voice tight. Isla has her preschool program. You are not leaving this building, Matteo said. He was in his office, which was no longer a CEO's office. It was a war room. Yes, I am, I said, my newfound steel surprising me. Moretti wins if we hide. He wins if he scares her. I will take Leo. I will take 2 guards. But she is going to school. We are not prisoners. He looked at me, a flicker of pride in his exhausted eyes. Fine, but you are wired. Leo will have a live feed. My team will be watching every second. The trip there was tense, a silent procession of 2 black SUVs, but nothing happened. We dropped Isla off. The teachers looked at me, their eyes full of pity and fear. I ignored them. It was on the way back that they struck. I was in the lead SUV with Leo driving. The second car, carrying 2 other guards, was behind us. We were crossing the Randolph Street Bridge. The black pickup truck came out of nowhere, barreling up a do-not-enter ramp. It was not the same truck as before. This one was new, heavy-duty and reinforced. It slammed into the passenger side of our vehicle, the sound a percussive explosion of metal and glass. Our SUV, heavy as it was, screeched, slamming into the concrete median. Leo fought the wheel. Get down, he roared at me. The truck reversed, its tires smoking, and rammed us again, harder. It was trying to push us, to flip us, over the low median and into the oncoming lanes. We are pinned, Leo yelled into his wrist mic. The second SUV was blocked by traffic. I see it, Matteo's voice crackled back, not in my ear, but from the car's comms system. He was watching. He was seeing everything. The truck pulled back, lining up for a third, high-speed impact. "Leo," Mateo's voice was ice. "Turn into the truck on my mark. Hit the accelerator. Mark." Leo did it. He yanked the wheel to the right and slammed the gas. We collided with the truck. A glancing, grinding blow that sent us spinning into the center of the bridge. The truck was disabled. Its front axle snapped. 2 men jumped out and started running. But Mateo was already ahead of them. They are on foot, heading north on Wacker. I have them. "Boss, I am clear," the second car's driver yelled. "Permission to pursue." "Negative," Mateo commanded. "You stay with Rowan. Get her secure. No one fires a shot. I repeat, no one." I could hear him on another channel, not talking to his guards, but to someone else. They are 2 blocks north of the Opera House. Both males, dark clothing. Yes, I am routing their signal now. He was not using his men. He was using the city. The 2 men ran, but they were trapped in a maze. As they approached an intersection, the traffic lights all turned red, creating an instant gridlock of angry cars. They turned down an alley, and a city sanitation truck, one of his, suddenly stalled, blocking the exit. "I have them," Mateo said, his voice cold. He was watching them on a municipal traffic camera. "They are trapped between Lake and Randolph. I am sending the police." He had not fired a single bullet. He had not broken a single law. He had used his logistics network, his control of the city's infrastructure, to catch them like rats in a trap. He had neutralized the threat with a laptop. When we got back to the penthouse, I was shaking. But Isla was in a full-blown panic attack. The sound of the crash, the lurch of the car, it had brought everything back. She was huddled by the elevator, hyperventilating. Her small hands clawed, her eyes wide with a terror that was not just about today. Mateo ran to her. Isla, you are safe. Papa is here. Stop it. Breathe." He was trying to command the panic away, to control it, and his frantic energy was only making her worse. "Mateo, stop," I said, odds in pushing past him. My old nursing instincts took over. I knelt in front of her. "Hey, look at me." I took her small, cold hands. "Look at my eyes. Isla, you are safe, but you are scared, and that is okay. Let's get our breath back together." I started taking exaggerated, slow breaths in and out. Good, in and out. "Now, I want you to play a game with me. It is the 5 game. Can you do that?" She gave a tiny, shuddering nod, her eyes still locked on mine. "Okay," I said, my voice low and calm. "Name 5 things you can see right now. Whisper them to me." Foxy," she whispered. Your hair, the floor, the light, Papa." "Brilliant," I said. "You got 5. Now 4 things you can hear. The wind, my breath, your voice, the car, and cars outside." "Perfect. Now 3 things you can feel. What is in your hands?" "Foxy," she said, her grip tightening. "The carpet, my dress." "Good. 2 things you can smell." She took a shaky breath. You smell like cookies." I was wearing vanilla lotion. "One more," I said. "1 thing you can taste." My tears," she whispered. "That is okay," I said. I wiped her cheek with my thumb. "You did it. Look, your breath is back." She was calm. The terror had receded. She leaned forward and just rested her head against my shoulder. I looked up. Mateo was standing there, his face a mask of stunned awe. He had just seen me use a power he could not buy. He had seen me heal what he could only contain. "That," he said, his voice thick. "That was... How did you do that?" "It is called grounding," I said, stroking Isla's hair. "It is just a technique to pull you out of the panic and back into the room." He nodded, not speaking, just watching me. The war room was different now. The men he had captured were in police custody, and they were talking. They were hired guns. Paid by a shell corporation, the trail was getting warmer. Mateo was no longer surrounded by his old capos. He was flanked by a new team, a sharp woman named Alana. who was a civil rights attorney with a background in corporate fraud, and a young man named Ben, a digital forensics specialist who looked like he lived on coffee and code. "Here it is," Ben said, pointing to the massive screen. He had the forged documents up. "Moretti is smart. He used layered encryption, shell servers, but he got arrogant. The metadata on the forged bank transfer, the big one, is flawed." He typed, and a string of code appeared. The digital signature was created at 10:32 p.m. on Tuesday, but the server log from the Cayman Islands bank he spoofed shows the file was received at 10:31 p.m. He uploaded it a full minute before he technically created it. It is a digital impossibility. It is the fingerprint. He rushed. "And the call to child services," Alana said, her voice crisp. "We got the tower log. It came from a burner phone. But that burner phone was turned on for exactly 5 minutes. And in that time, it made one other call, just before dialing child services." She wrote a number on the whiteboard. Mateo stared at it. His face went white. "I know that number." He picked up his desk phone. "Leo, bring Rocco to my office. Now." I had seen Rocco, and he was one of Mateo's oldest guards, a man with graying hair who had been with the family for decades. He entered the office, flanked by 2 guards, his face pale with sweat. "Boss?" Rocco asked, his voice trembling. Mateo just pointed to the number on the whiteboard. "That was your burner phone. Rocco, you made the call to child services. You set Rowan up on the bridge. You have been feeding Moretti my schedules for 6 months. Why?" Rocco collapsed, his knees hitting the marble floor. He had my son?" he sobbed. "My son, he has, gambling. He owed Moretti's people $200,000. They were going to kill him. He said he would wipe the debt. He just wanted to know when Rowan was alone." Mateo's face was stone. The betrayal was absolute, a knife in the back from a man he trusted as family. The old Mateo, the man I met at Cento, would have had Rocco taken to the docks. Instead, he just looked at him with a cold, profound sadness. "Get him out of my sight." Later that night, I found Mateo on the veranda, staring into the rain. Isla was asleep, safe. The penthouse was silent. "They are holding Rocco downstairs," he said, his voice flat. "My men, the old guard, they are waiting for my order, the order to make him disappear." "What are you going to do?" I asked softly. He was quiet for a long time. When Elena died, I was in the ambulance with her. She was already gone, but they were still working on her." He turned to look at me, his eyes hollow. It was a blizzard. The city was frozen. The ambulance got lost, twice. They were only 10 minutes away, but the snow... They were late. They were 10 minutes too late. I stepped closer, my heart aching for him. "I swore," he whispered, "that I would never be helpless again, that I would control everything, the weather, the streets, the time. I built this entire empire. All of it. Just to fight a snowstorm, just to get those 10 minutes back." I reached out and put my hand on his chest, over his heart. "Mateo, you cannot control the snow. You can only control what you do. Control is not care. What you did today, catching those men without firing a shot, what you did for Isla, bringing her back from the panic, that is care." He looked at me, his gaze raw. "You see that? Do you not? You see the man I am trying to be?" The next day, I was at the community kitchen. It was the only place that felt sane. The kids were there. The smell of tomato sauce and garlic was in the air. We were making lasagna. Mateo walked in. He was not wearing a suit. He was wearing jeans and a dark gray sweater. The kids all stopped. "Mr. One of them yelled, "You gonna cry at the onions again?" A small smile touched his lips. "Not today." He walked straight to me, looked terrified. "Rowan Tiant," he said. In the middle of the church basement, surrounded by 10 children with sauce on their faces, Mateo Lucero dropped to one knee. The room went utterly silent. I clapped a hand over my mouth. "I do not have a ring," he started. his voice thick with emotion. "I do not have an empire right now. My bank accounts are frozen. My family thinks I am insane. I am under federal investigation, and I am in love with you." I was openly crying now. "You are the most terrifying, brave, and honest person I have ever met," he said, his eyes locked on mine. "You walked into my cold, dead life, and you taught me how to be a father. You taught me how to fight. You are not my weakness, Rowan. You are my strength. My entire life. I have been building things that break. I want to build something that lasts. With you, with Isla." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. It was not a huge diamond. It was a simple, elegant platinum band. "I bought this a week ago. I was just waiting for the courage to give it to you." "Mateo," I whispered. "Marry me. Rowan Hale. Help me build a real home." The children were holding their breath. I looked at this impossible, broken, magnificent man. "Yes," I whispered, "but on one condition." He waited, his eyes hopeful. "We do this right, Banti," I said, my voice firm. "We choose the hard, honest way. No more shadows, no more old ways. We give Isla a name she can be proud of. We win this with the truth." He stood up, a slow smile spreading across his face. "The hard way," he agreed. He slid the simple, cool ring onto my finger, every time. "Then yes," I said, laughing through my tears, 1,000 times, yes. The kids erupted in cheers. He acted fast. The engagement was a catalyst. Rocco, the traitor, was not taken to the docks. Mateo had Leo drive him to the nearest police precinct and hand him over, along with a full confession and all the evidence of Moretti's blackmail. It was a seismic act. Lucero was handing one of his own to the cops. Mateo liquidated his remaining high-risk operations, the gray areas of his business. He poured the money, publicly, into the Lucero Foundation, announcing a plan to open 10 more community kitchens. Then, he, Alana, and Ben took their file, the metadata, the impossible timestamps, Rocco's confession, and they did not leak it. They walked into the U.S. attorney's office and handed it over. They offered full cooperation in exchange for immunity for the legitimate side of Lucero Logistics. The government, faced with a perfect pre-built case against a man they had been trying to nail for years, agreed. The FBI raid on Moretti Tower happened at dawn. It was on every news channel. Dominic Moretti, cornered, did the only thing he could. He lashed out, not at Mateo, but at me. The internet exploded with a coordinated smear campaign, stories that I was a failed nurse, fired for stealing medication, that I had a history of preying on vulnerable men, that my mother's medical debt was actually from a gambling problem. They were vicious, disgusting, and terrifyingly plausible. I was in the kitchen, staring at my phone, the blood draining from my face. When Mateo walked in, he did not say a word. He just took my hand. He led me to the penthouse lobby. It was filled with reporters, a full press conference. He stepped up to the podium. His face was cold fury. "You have all read the lies about Miss Hale," he said, his voice booming. "Now you will hear the truth." He did not just deny the claims. He annihilated them. He projected my nursing school transcripts, pristine. He showed a signed, notarized letter from my dean of nursing. He showed the itemized, paid in full invoices from my mother's oncology ward. "Dominic Moretti attacked my business," Mateo said, his eyes scanning the room. "When that failed, he attacked my daughter. And now, in his final, pathetic act, he attacks the woman I love. This is not journalism. This is the last gasp of a dying criminal. Miss Hale is my fiancée. She is my partner, and she possesses more integrity and strength than any person in this city. This attack on her is an attack on me, and it will be the last mistake Mr. Moretti ever makes." Mateo's press conference was a declaration of war fought with truth. The impact was immediate and decisive. The narrative, so carefully poisoned by Dominic Moretti, shattered. The video of Mateo, his face cold with rage, defending my history, my mother's honor, and our engagement, went viral. He had not just denied the lies, he had proven them to be malicious fabrications. The legal victory followed with breathtaking speed. The U.S. Attorney's Office, armed with Matteo's proactive cooperation, Rocco's confession, and Ben's irrefutable digital evidence, unraveled Moretti's empire. The impossible timestamp on the forged documents was the key that unlocked everything. They seized servers from 3 different data centers. They discovered the chains of command, the network of bot farms paid to amplify the fake news, the secret accounts used to hire the men who attacked me. It was a house of cards, and Ben had pulled the single card that made it all collapse. But there was one final, crucial piece of testimony. The federal agents were building their case on fraud and racketeering, but they still needed a clear motive for the city-level corruption, the port seizures, and the attack on child services. The key came from the last person I ever expected, Bianca Moretti. She contacted Alana, Matteo's lawyer, through a secure channel. She requested a meeting, not with Matteo, but with Alana. She wanted to cooperate. I was there, in Alana's office. When she arrived, she looked different. The perfect, polished armor was gone. She was in a simple suit, her hair pulled back. She looked tired, but she looked free. "My uncle is finished," she said, her voice crisp. She did not sound sad. She sounded pragmatic. "He will try to drag me down with him. I will not let him." "Why are you here, Bianca?" Alana asked. "My entire life," she said, looking not at Alana, but at me, "has been a negotiation, a contract. I was a tool for him to secure an alliance, just like he assumed Isla was a tool for your family." She took a deep breath. "When I saw Mr. Lucero defy his own family at that ridiculous lunch for his daughter and for you, I realized I had a choice. I do not want to live in a cage, even if it is a beautiful one." She slid a thin, leather-bound folder across the desk. "This is not digital," Bianca said. "My uncle is old school. He kept hard copies. These are the real zoning applications. He was not trying to take over Lucero Logistics. He was trying to destroy it. He has been bribing city officials for 6 months to have the entire port district rezoned for high-rise residential. He wanted to bankrupt Matteo, seize the land in the auction, and build condominiums. It was the final piece, the motive, the evidence of systematic corruption that went far beyond forged bank transfers. It was the kill shot. With the case against Moretti now public and ironclad, the smaller pieces of my life began to click back into place. We received a formal, scheduled visit from Agent Miller of the Department of Child Services. She came to the penthouse, but this time she was alone, and she was not holding a file. She looked deeply uncomfortable. "Miss Hale, Mr. Lucero," she said, standing stiffly in the entryway, "I am here to inform you that our case is officially closed." I let out a breath I did not realize I had been holding for weeks. "We have received a formal reprimand from the state's attorney," she continued, her cheeks coloring. "The anonymous tip that triggered our investigation has been traced, as you know, to a source now under federal indictment for racketeering. It was a malicious and fraudulent claim." She looked at me. Our department. We apologize. We were used. Your file is sealed and expunged." "Thank you, Agent Miller," Matteo said, his voice polite but cold. "And, Miss Hale," she added, turning to leave, "your grounding technique. The 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, we have incorporated it into our new training manuals for non-verbal trauma cases. You were right. She is thriving." Isla's recovery was the most profound victory. The fear that had kept her a prisoner in her own home was receding. She still had bad days, still flinched at loud noises, but the silence was gone. The community kitchen was having its first graduation day. We were giving certificates to the first group of children who had completed the 8-week program. The basement was crowded with parents, steam rising from a huge pot of pasta. I gave a small speech, thanking the kids for their hard work. Mateo was in the back, leaning against the wall, a quiet, proud observer. "Does anyone want to share what they learned?" I asked. A few kids shyly raised their hands, talking about learning to hold a knife or not burning the garlic. Then Illa, who was standing next to me in her own small apron, stepped forward. My heart stopped. She looked out at the crowd of strangers, her small face serious. She found her father in the back, and he gave her a small nod. "My name is Isla Lucero," she said, her voice clear and strong. It did not waver. "I learned how to crack an egg with one hand, mostly, and I learned about vanilla." The room was silent, listening to this small 6-year-old girl. "I learned," she said, her eyes finding mine, "that panna cotta tastes like home. It used to taste like my first mommy. It was a sad taste." She took a breath. "But now it tastes like Rowan. It tastes happy." I covered my mouth, tears streaming down my face, in the back of the room. Mateo turned and pressed his forehead against the wall, his shoulders shaking. The Lucero family elders summoned Mateo for a final meeting. This time, he did not go alone. I walked in beside him, my hand in his, the simple platinum band on my finger. The mood was not celebratory. It was funereal. Zia Elena sat at the head of the table. She looked at me. The open hostility was gone, replaced by a cold, practical assessment. "The banks have unfrozen the accounts," one of his uncles said, breaking the silence. "The federal investigation is focused entirely on Moretti. The Lucero name is clear." "You saved the assets," Zia Elena said. It was not a compliment. It was a statement of fact. "You did it. Without starting a war, you used their rules." She looked at me, at my simple dress, at my hand in his. "The girl, this alliance, it is unorthodox, but it is practical. The family accepts the arrangement." It was the closest I would ever get to an apology. It was an acknowledgement. I was not the help. I was the person who had helped save their legacy. We did not want a big wedding, a grand cathedral ceremony, a ballroom filled with the people who had just tried to tear us apart. Felt like a performance. We got married in the small, patchy yard behind the community kitchen. It was a Saturday, just after dusk. We hung strings of yellow lights from the old oak tree. The air smelled like cut grass and the garlic bread the kids were baking inside for the reception. Our guests were the children from the program, their families. Alana, Ben, and Leo. That was it. I wore a simple white dress I had bought at a department store. Mateo wore his best blue suit, but no tie. Ila was my maid of honor. She wore a yellow dress and held a small bunch of daisies. A city judge, a friend of Alana's, performed the ceremony in the middle of Mateo's vows. A small boy yelled, "Tag, you are it," and a group of children ran shrieking past us. Mateo just laughed, grabbed my hands, and said, Mateo, take you, Rowan, in chaos and in quiet." "Rowan," I said, my voice thick with tears. "Take you, Mateo, in wealth and, well, you are not poor anymore. But in all of it, the hard way." "The hard way," he repeated. When the judge pronounced us married, he did not just kiss me. He pulled me into a hug that lifted me off the ground, a hug of pure, unadulterated relief. Isla ran to us, her face beaming. She was holding her stuffed fox, the one with the torn ear, her constant companion. She held him out to me. "Sweetie," I asked, kneeling down. "He is yours now," she said, her voice firm. "For keeps. You have to keep him safe now." She was giving me her armor. She was telling me she did not need it anymore. I took the small, worn toy. "I will protect him with my life," I whispered. I looked up at Mateo. He was staring at his daughter, his hand over his mouth. He was crying. Not the few tears I'd seen before, but a deep, profound, silent weeping. The tears of a man who had finally put down his weapons. We rebuilt. Mateo did not just restart his business. He transformed it. Lucero Logistics signed a new, public transparency charter with the city. He invited oversight. He launched the Lucero Foundation's first major project, the West Side Technical Scholarship. It was a full fund for any graduate of our community kitchen programs to attend trade school or get a logistics certification. He was building his new workforce from the ground up, with honesty. We received a postcard. It had a picture of the Golden Gate Bridge. It was from Bianca Moretti. She had not gone to the East Coast. She had gone west. She had taken a job as a senior compliance officer for a tech firm. The note on the back was simple. My uncle built a cage. You built a door. Thank you. It was her way of saying goodbye, and her way of saying she was sorry. 1 year later. We did not move out of the penthouse. We learned how to make it a home. The cold marble floors were now covered in bright, mismatched rugs. The sterile, empty walls were a gallery of Isla's artwork, a chaotic, colorful explosion of crayon and paint. The stainless steel refrigerator was so covered in drawings, school notices, and magnets that you could not see the metal underneath. The community kitchen in the church basement was no longer just one kitchen. The Lucero Foundation, now fully and legitimately funded, had just opened its 4th location. The program had a waiting list. It was not just about cooking. It was about life skills, about providing a safe, warm place to land after school. It was a place where dozens of kids felt seen. I was standing in the original kitchen, my hands deep in a bowl of dough. My belly was round and full, a new life growing inside me, a son. I was 7 months pregnant, and I felt a profound, settled peace I had never known. Isla, now 7 years old and impossibly tall, was at the station next to me. She was wearing a small apron that said, Big Sister in Training. She was, with the intense focus of a surgeon, teaching a group of 5-year-olds how to properly hold a whisk. No, Leo Jr., she said, correcting a small, clumsy boy. You have to use your wrist, not your whole arm, like this. See, you are making clouds, not splashing mud. She had started her own class, The Little Cooks. She was a natural leader, patient and clear. The selective mutism that had once defined her was a ghost, a memory. She was, without question, the loudest, happiest, and bossiest person in the room. Mateo walked in. He looked different. The heavy, dark armor of the boss was gone. He was still in a suit, but it was lighter. The permanent tension in his shoulders had eased. He had spent the last 6 months getting a slew of new certifications. He was no longer just the owner of Lucero Logistics. He was a fully certified operator. He was the man who negotiated with the Port Authority using spreadsheets and compliance reports, not intimidation and backroom deals. He had learned to win by being smarter, not harder. He came up behind me, wrapping his arms around me and resting his hands on my stomach. The baby kicked. He likes it when you are here, I murmured, leaning back against his chest. He has good taste, Mateo said, kissing the side of my neck. Isla, your students are splashing flour on my shoes. It is good for them, Papa, she called back, not looking up. It teaches them not to be afraid of a mess. He chuckled, his chin resting on my shoulder. She is quoting you. I know, I said. I am terrified. We were happy. It was not a perfect, flawless happiness. It was a happiness built on a foundation of hard choices. We had scars. The news had been full of the final verdict just last week. Dominic Moretti was sentenced. It was not a dramatic courtroom shootout. It was a quiet, clinical proceeding. He was found guilty on 12 counts of wire fraud, data manipulation, and conspiracy to commit bribery. The judge, citing the overwhelming digital evidence and the testimony from Bianca, sentenced him to 20 years in a federal prison. He was an old man. It was a life sentence. We had won. We had not used a single bullet. We had not broken a single law. We had dismantled a criminal empire with the truth. But the scars remained. We were in the car a few nights ago, driving back from the symphony. Isla had fallen asleep in the back. I was resting my head on Mateo's shoulder. In the distance, a siren wailed, an ambulance, cutting through the night. Mateo's entire body went rigid, his hand, which had been resting on my leg, clenched into a fist. He was not in the car with me. He was back in that ambulance, in the snowstorm, 10 minutes too late. I did not say anything. I just covered his fist with my hand, uncurling his fingers one by one and lacing them with mine. I squeezed hard. He took a sharp, shuddering breath. "I am here," he whispered. A mantra, he said to himself. "You are here." I whispered back, "We are here." It is just a siren, Mateo. It is just someone getting help. Help that will get there on time. He squeezed my hand back, his thumb rubbing over my ring. He stayed quiet for a long time. Love is not about erasing the scars. It is about being the person who holds the other person's hand over and over until the panic passes. It is a small, repeated, constant action. Isla had to write an essay for her school application. The prompt was simple: "What does home mean to you?" She had worked on it for 3 days, her tongue sticking out in concentration. When she finally showed it to us, I had to go to the kitchen to cry. Mateo just sat in his office, reading it over and over. It was only 4 sentences. Home is not a place with glass walls. Home is not a place where you are quiet. Home is a kitchen, don't eat. Yet home is a kitchen where someone waits for you to taste what they made. I framed it. It hangs in the real kitchen now, the one in the penthouse. It hangs right next to her first drawing of the 3 of us. Our life was not a fairy tale. The world was still the world, the old forces that Mateo had belonged to, the ones that operated in shadow and blood, had not just disappeared because he had changed. They were still there. They were watching. Mateo had gotten a text message last night. It was from an unknown, encrypted number. He showed it to me. It just said, "You chose light. That's harder. They will be watching." We did not know who they were. Was it a threat? A warning from an old ally? It did not matter. "Let them watch," I said, putting my arms around his waist. "We are not hiding." "No," he said, pulling me close. "We are not." We had a new code. We had a new family. We had a community. We were not afraid of the dark anymore, because we were building a place with so much light. Tonight was Friday. Friday was family night at the community kitchen. It was an open-door dinner for all the students, their parents, and anyone in the neighborhood who was hungry. The long wooden tables in the church basement were groaning with food: lasagna, salads, garlic bread, and 24 panna cottas, all made by Isla's little cooks. The room was loud, chaotic, and filled with laughter. I was at the head of the table, sitting between Isla and Mateo. He was in a deep, nerdy discussion with Ben, our data guy, about new logistics software. Isla was explaining to a very short 5-year-old why tomatoes are, in fact, a fruit. I looked down the long table. I saw Alana, our lawyer, laughing with some of the mothers from the neighborhood. I saw Leo, our stoic guard, being challenged to an arm wrestle by a 10-year-old. This was our new family. This was our new empire. It was not built on fear or control. It was built on panna cotta. It was built on second chances. Mateo must have felt me watching him. He stopped his conversation. Turning to look at me, he did not say anything. He just smiled. A real, unguarded smile that still, after all this time, made my heart skip. He reached across the table and took my hand. He brought my hand to his lips and kissed my knuckles. He had found his 10 minutes. We had all found our time. The obsessions, the ghosts, the trauma, they were all still there. But they were quiet. They were drowned out by the clatter of forks, the smell of tomato sauce, and the sound of his daughter's bright, beautiful laughter. True power, I realized, is not the ability to control everything. It is the wisdom to know what is worth holding on to, and the courage to let the rest go. It is the ability to not use power when you could. Fairy tales and cities are built one honest choice at a time. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I am so curious. Where in the world are you listening from? Please let me know in the comments so we can all connect and share our thoughts. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe to my channel, Mafia Boss Stories, and give this video a like. It really helps. And please support the story by hitting that hype button so more people can get a chance to hear it.